Today everyone, we are Group 2 and now we are going to discuss the macroeconomics encapsulated in three models, the short run, medium run, and the long run.
Hello everyone, I'm Micaela Gutierrez. Before we delve into the topic, I would like to share some insights about the concept of the short run in economics. Economics define the short run as a period of time in which at least one of a firm's input remains fixed. For example, is a firm might have a long-term lease on a factory that is too costly to get out of. So we have short run. Short run output fluctuations are large enough to matter a great deal. Accounting for short run fluctuation in output is a domain of aggregate demand. So in the short run, its significant change in output can have a significant impacts. It also addressing this punctuation falls under the realm of aggregate demand, which involves managing the overall demands for goods and services in economy. Second is, in the short run, the aggregate supply curve is flat. The short-run aggregate supply curve pegs the price level at the point where the supply curve hits the vertical axis. In the short run, the aggregate supply curve is horizontal, indicating that the price level remains fixed where the supply curve intersects the vertical axis. This means that change in aggregate demand primarily affect the output level rather than the causing price level fluctuation. Third is output in contrast. Can take on any value. The underlying assumption is that the level of output does not affect price in the short run. So, in contrast, output can vary widely, assuming that in the short run change in output do not influence prices significantly. This implies that fluctuation in output will not lead to corresponding change in the price level during this period.
Good day everyone, I'm Drama Recredo and I will be discussing the continuation of the short run. So in the short run, output is determined by aggregate demand alone and prices are unaffected by the level of output. So the level of output is primarily determined by total demand for goods and services in the economy, known as aggregate demand. In fluctuations in aggregate demand have a direct impact on the level of production and economic activity. However, in the short run context, prices not significantly affected by changes in output. So for example, when consumers increase their spending on goods and services, aggregate demand rises. For instance, during the holiday season, people tend to spend more on gifts, decorations, and travel. This boosts the demand for these products, leading to increased production in the short run to meet the higher demand. Prices might not change immediately as businesses often use existing resources and labor without altering prices drastically for short-term fluctuations. When the aggregate demand shifts to the left or right, the intersection of the two curves, aggregate supply and aggregate demand, moves horizontally, or output change, rather than up and down, or the price level doesn't change. So when the aggregate demand curve shifts to the left or right, due to changes in factors like consumer spending, investment, or government policies, the intersection point of the aggregate demand curve and the short-run aggregate supply curve also shifts horizontally. This horizontal shift represents changes in output or real GDP, but it doesn't lead to substantial changes in the price level. In the short run, aggregate demand determines output and therefore unemployment. So since output is determined by aggregate demand in the short run, fluctuations in aggregate demand can directly impact the level of economic activity and consequently employment. An increase in aggregate demand can lead to higher output and lower unemployment, while a decrease can result in a lower output and higher unemployment.
Good day, everyone. I am Isabi Silva, and I am going to discuss the topic The medium run. The medium run. A medium run in macroeconomics typically refers to an intermediate time frame, usually spanning several months to a few years. It's longer than the short run, where some prices and wages are assumed to be sticky, and shorter than the long run, where prices and wages are fully flexible. In the medium run, economic variables like GDP, unemployment, and inflation can be affected by both short-term fluctuations and long-term structural changes. Policymakers often focus on medium-run analysis to understand how changes in economic conditions can be influenced by both short-term adjustments and underlying trends. Wages, price, and the natural rate of unemployment. The natural rate of unemployment such that the real wage chosen in wage setting is equal to the real wage implied by setting. In wage setting relation, the higher the employment rate, the weaker the position of workers in bargaining and the lower the real wage will be. In price setting relation, an increase in the markup leads firm to increase their prices given the wage they have to pay that leads to decrease in the real wage. Wages. A fixed regular payment typically paid on a daily or weekly basis. It is made by an employer to an employee, especially to a manual or unskilled worker. Next is price, or the amount of money expected, required, or given in payment for something. Natural rate of unemployment. The natural rate of unemployment is the lowest unemployment rate that occurs when demand and supply for labor are at the equilibrium rate. It includes frictional and structural unemployment. Aggregate supply captures the effects of output on the price level. The first property of the AS, or the aggregate supply relation, is that an increase in output leads to an increase in the price level. Second, an increase in the expected price level leads to an increase in the actual price level, then the aggregate supply curve is upward sloping. Aggregate demand captures the effect of the price level or output. An increase in level leads to a decrease in output.
Good day everyone, I am Aldrin Paul and I will discuss the aggregate production function in long run. So what is aggregate production function? The uses of aggregate production function is to describe how an economy's output changes over time as a result of changes in capital, labor, and technology. So the aggregate production function in Encapsulated models helps economists and policymakers analyze the factors that contributed to economic growth in the long run and make predictions about an economy's potential output and standards of living. So, imagine you have a machines that can make things. This machines has two main parts. The stuff is made of machines, factories, and buildings. We all call this as a capital, and the people who operate the machine is the workers or labor. So, the long run aggregate production function is like a recipe that tells you how much stuff and how many people you need to make things. It works like this. Capital. The more machines, factories, and infrastructure you have, the more you can produce. If you have more capital, so you can make more stuff. Labor. The more skilled and efficient your workers are, and the more of them you have, the more you can produce. If you have more workers or better trained workers, you can make more stuff. And the last is the technology and efficiency. This part represents how good your machine is. If you're if you improve your technology or become more efficient at using your capital and labor, you can produce even more stuff with the same amount of inputs. So in simple terms, the long run aggregate production function tell us that if you want to make more stuff in the long run, you can buy more machines and build more factories. You can hire more workers and train them better, and you can make your existing machines and workers work better. Now, here's the important part. The long run production function assumes that you can adjust your capital, labor, and technology freely. In the short term, you might be stuck with a certain amount of capital and labor, but in the long run, you can change and adapt everything. This concept is crucial for understanding how an economy grows over time. If a country invests in more factories, educates its workforce, and innovates with new technology, it can produce more and become wealthier in the long run. So economists and policymakers use this idea to figure out how to promote economic growth and prosperity. They work on policies that encourage investments in machines and infrastructure, better education and skills for workers, and technology advancement. All these factors can make the magic production machines work better, leading to richer and more prosperous society in the long run.
Good day. My name is Ryan Carlo Yubay, and I'm going to discuss to you about the Solo Growth Model. The Solo Growth Model is developed by a Nobel laureate, Robert Solow, in the 1950s. The Solo Growth Model is a fundamental framework in macroeconomics that explains long-run economic growth in economies. It offers insights into how changes in factors like capital accumulation, population growth, and technological progress affect an economy's output over time. There are some key components and insights in the Solo Growth Model. These are the examples. The production function. It says that the model starts with the production function, which relates the total output of an economy to the inputs of production, primarily capital, and labor. Well, the formula of this is Y equals F to K and L. Well, the Y stands for the total output of an economy, to the K stands for the primary capital, and the L stands for the labor. This function represents how efficiently an economy transforms its inputs into output. Another example of a key component is the diminishing marginal returns. The Solow model assumes diminishing marginal returns to capital, meaning that as an economy invests more in capital, example of this are machineries and factories, the additional output gain from each unit of capital becomes smaller. This reflects the idea that there are limits to how efficiently capital can be utilized. Next is the saving and investment. The model incorporates the idea that a portion of output is saved and invested rather than consumed. The savings rate represents the fraction of output saved and used for investment. Mathematically, it represents as capital S is equals to S and Y, where S is total savings and Y is a total output. Capital accumulation. It says that the change in the capital stock over time is driven by the difference between investment and depreciation. This is the formula. Delta K is equals to S minus the Greek symbol D, K. Well, the delta K stands for the change of the capital stock, and the S is represented to investment, and the Greek symbol D represents the depreciation rate of capital. This accumulation of capital contributes to economic growth. Next is the population growth and technological progress. The Solow model considers these two exogenous factors that influence economic growth. It says that population growth increases the supply of labor, while technological progress increases the productivity, and it's often assumed to follow a steady exogenous growth rate. These are the formulas. Delta L is equals to N, L, and delta A equals to G and A, where delta L is the change in the labor force and the delta A is the change in the technology. While L stands for labor and the N stands for the population growth. And also the A stands for the technological progress and the G stands for the growth rate. The next key component is the convergence. It says that the model predicts that economies with lower initial levels of capital per worker will grow faster and eventually catch up to the economies with higher initial levels. Dito sinasabi na ang may economy na may mababang level of capital worker ay mabilis lumaki or kikita at makakahabol ito sa mga economy na may mataas na initial capital. Ito din ay tinatawag na conditional convergence. The last key component is the policy implications. It says that the Solow model suggests that policies aim at increasing the saving rate, improving the efficiency of investment, or promoting technological progress that can contribute to sustained economic growth in the long run. Overall, the Solow growth model provides a foundational framework for understanding the determinants of long-run economic growth and the role of factors like capital accumulation, population growth, and technological progress in shaping an economy's development over time. That's all. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am CJ Nasol and now I will be discussing the key features of long run in macroeconomics. In macroeconomics, the long run refers to a period during which the economy has fully adjusted to various economic forces and all prices and wages have become flexible. In this context, the long run is not a specific duration of time but rather a theoretical concept. Key features of long run in macroeconomics include flexible prices and wages, full employment, potential output, and economic growth. Let's begin with flexible prices and wages. In the long run, prices and wages are assumed to be fully flexible, meaning they can adjust to changes in supply and demand without any obstacles. When prices and wages are flexible, they can respond to shift in market conditions. For example, if there's an increase in demand for a particular product, prices can rise to reflect the higher demand, and firms can adjust wages to attract more workers to produce that product. Conversely, if demand decreases, prices and wages can fall. This contrasts with the short run, where prices and wages are often sticky and do not adjust immediately. Secondly, we have full employment. The full employment in the long run refers to a situation in the economy where all available resources, especially labor, are being used efficiently to produce goods and services. This means there is minimal unemployment and the economy is operating at its highest potential, ensuring that resources are not wasted and the economy is productive. Next key features, we have potential output. The economy operates at its potential output level in the long run. This represents the maximum sustainable level of production determined by factors like technological progress, the size of labor force, and the quantity of capital available. We have here the three factors that may influence the potential output. Number one, we have technological progress. Number two, we have labor force. And lastly, we have capital stock. Technological advancement play a crucial role in increasing potential output. Improved technology allows for more efficient production processes, which can lead to higher levels of productivity and economic growth. Labor force. The size and skills level of the labor force contribute significantly to potential output. A larger and more skilled labor force can produce more goods and services. Capital stock. The quantity and quality of capital available, such as machinery, infrastructure, and equipment, also influence potential output. Increased capital investment can boost production capacity. And the last key features of the long run is the natural rate of unemployment. In the long run, the economy reaches the natural rate of unemployment, which is the rate at which there is no cyclical unemployment. It includes only frictional and structural unemployment, which are considered normal in a healthy economy. Frictional unemployment is when people are temporarily between jobs because they are searching for better opportunities, while structural unemployment occurs when job skills don't match available positions. Both are normal in a healthy economy as people change jobs and industries evolve, but they should be relatively low for overall economic health. In conclusion, the long run in macroeconomics is marked by stable prices, full employment, potential output, and sustainable economic growth. These features are crucial because they indicate a well-functioning and prosperous economy that benefits individuals, businesses, and society as a whole. Stable prices ensure that purchasing power remains steady, full employment supports livelihoods, and sustained growth paves the way for improved living standards and opportunities for all.